All right, everybody, we are live. Thanks for joining us today. We have a follow up conversation in regards to the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation topic we had last week and getting into a little bit more depth about the importance of personalized coaching rather than getting into kind of that box type business coaching where you just dovetail into their pre existing systems. A lot of times we'll see that it's can be a wrong approach, can be costly, can even be ineffective if you're not quite wired that way. Then we'll chat a little bit about the importance of identifying, how you're wired, what makes you tick, what you're passionate about, and how we can implement personalized systems. We're going to chat with Dr. Roger Hall again today. He's a business psychologist, executive coach, public speaker, author, and we like to tease him about being the neuro nerd. That comes out quite often in our in our conversations, which is always fun to hear and see. So thanks for joining us again today, Dr. Hall.
Thank you for having me, Jared. Grateful to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. This one will be a fun one. I'm really looking forward to it. But we'll chat about our housekeeping items here real quick. For those of you that I haven't met yet, my name is Jared Lee. I'm the associate broker and team lead at MHC Realty. Our sponsor for today is the perfect real estate business. We've spent the better part of a couple decades here developing out the process of building just right perfect real estate business for you as best we can. Implementing things along with a partnership with Dr. Hall, business coaching, life coaching, mentoring, and training. And then, of course, the things that we've all kind of known to appreciate in our business with lead generation, some passive income for revenue and profit sharing. So we can talk all about that at a later time. If you'd like to learn more, feel free to reach out. But we'll bring Dr. Hall back on. And if we can just summarize a little bit of how we got here and your kind of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation and how a lot of people sell their wares by trying to motivate you and then sell you a system. That was my definition, not yours, but kind of what I've
Yeah,
seen in my experience.
yeah. There is there's a lot in all education, a one size fits all, and if you're doing one to many training, if you're a school teacher in front of a class of 30, it'll be nearly impossible to give individualized instruction to every student. And if I'm a sales trainer or a mission, vision, values trainer, I've got a set structure of how I'm going to do my thing. And in a classroom of 30, it's going to work for most of them, but it won't work for everybody. And so I think what you were focusing on was that people make claims about their process or their technique or their system that just won't work for everybody. And what individual coaches or individual consultants do is really study the person they're working with to figure out, okay, that system might not work for you. It might work for 97% of the population, but let's figure out what will work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I've really appreciated is in your, expedition process is, I had to learn a lot about myself before I could learn about how I want to conduct my business and things that I just, to be honest with you, would have never thought would probably be the case until I really dug into, the things you want ask us to look into, our presuppositions, our worldviews and what makes me tick. And there's just a lot to it. I won't get into all that, but I've seen systems. I've seen these box systems, and you hopefully get into that system and you are successful. But I've seen a lot of people not be successful. So can you kind of speak to what would make somebody not maybe be in alignment with what they thought they should be in alignment with, or do you have?
I mean, there's many reasons as there are people about why they won't work in a system. It's important. The beauty of these systems is that they generally work on the what we'll call the average person. But there's this wonderful book called The End of Average. And the conclusion is that person doesn't exist. There is no, quote, average person. So we're all off of average in some way. And so no matter what system that's going to work with the average person, everyone's going to have to make modifications. But if we look at the further you are away from average, either on the high end or on the low end, that system won't work for you. Well, if I'm selling a system, I can't make it work for everybody, and I really don't want it to work for the extreme fringe. So I'm looking for a system that'll work for most people. Mm-hmm. That's all well and good. And if you're closer to the middle, it's going to work better for you than most. But if you're on the fringes, then you're going to have to do a custom fit. And so I'm okay with systems. They're helpful for lots of people. But if you're one of those people for whom those systems just don't work, that's cool. I was working with somebody once, and successful business person, entrepreneur, self-employed, said, everybody wants you to do 5 and 10-year goals. And that just kills me. I mean, I just the thought of trudging after those goals is so demoralizing. I don't want to do it. And so I approached with a different tack on the same outcome. And it's a thing I call the day in the life exercise, which is imagine yourself, 5 years from now, and you wake up in the morning. Where are you? Describe your day to me in minute detail. And what that approach does is it gets at the non-linear ways that you want your life to look. How do you want it to feel? Where do you want to be? What's the mood you want in the future? And this person, it just clicked. Wow, this is exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
Well, if I made everybody go through give me your 5-year goals, your 10-year goals, that works for lots of people, but it wouldn't work for this person.
Yeah, and I'm exactly like that as well. I've heard that over and over and over again. Do your 5-year goals and you write them down. And then my analysis paralysis starts to kick in about how am I going to get there? And, I know, we've talked about this before. Our brains begin to process and solve problems and get answers to questions, but my mind wants those immediately. So that becomes super overwhelming. Yeah. But if I begin to think, hey, where do I want to be? Who do I want to be around, or what type of people do I want to be around? What do I see me doing? That's way more exciting, and I can begin to back into how to develop that.
And again, systems are helpful for most people, but if you don't fit in the system, you're not broken. You just don't fit in the system.
But you can feel broken, especially if you've done multiple systems.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The story in the book, the end of Average, that they start with, which is such a great story, is the Air Force wanted to create a cockpit that would fit the average pilot. And what they found is there is no average sized pilot. So every pilot was either trying to adjust. The ones that were an inch taller, their knees were cramped, and the ones that were an inch shorter, they'd have to boost themselves. And so finally, somebody had the brilliant ideas. Well, let's not just make one seat. Let's make an adjustable seat. You're spending $5 million on an airplane, and nobody figured out how that you need an adjustable seat. And once they did that, boom, then you started seeing people who were non-standard sizes, particularly women, succeeding in piloting because they got the chair to fit.
Go figure.
So rather than saying, oh, women aren't good enough pilots, no, they're just on average smaller, and let's make the chair adjustable so that they'll fit. And as soon as they did that, you're starting to see these really remarkable pilots. So it's not that you're broken. It's that you don't fit the system. And so that's why an individualized approach is so good. So again, I got no problem with training. I got no problem with systems. In fact, they're good. But if you don't fit, then you need a custom approach, and you probably need to hire somebody. which takes it to like, how do you know who's a good coach for you? And I've been doing this for more than 2 decades as an executive coach and a leadership development consultant. And, I've worked with businesses for, going on 23 years. And I don't do it, the more I realize I don't really fit real well with a lot of people. There are a lot of people that I'm not a good fit for. And so I'm really okay with not being their coach and them not being my client. They're going to be a lot happier if they choose somebody else. And so if I'm not the right guy, I want you to find that right person.
I totally admired the fact that when we started talking early on in your expedition course and whatnot, you said, these are the people that I don't remember, work well with, groove well with, gravitates towards. You said, these are the people that I want to work with, because over time I've learned that I work well with them and they do great with me. And, just basically saying, if this isn't you, that's okay.
Right. I mean, they're people that I just scare the bejeebers out of. They're people who find me, really awful. Okay.
That's all right.
We shouldn't be working together, because I don't want you to feel awful about yourself. I want you to feel good about who you're working with. And so part of it is recognizing, if you're a person who's looking for coaching, your self-awareness is really important. And then figuring out what the match is to whoever your coach or your consultant is. And the research is really clear that it's the match that makes the difference. There are some people, their approaches are just like completely woo-woo to me. I mean, I listen to them and I go, okay, it's not my thing.
Can't begin to listen to them.
Pardon me?
Can't begin to listen to them. They're just not my...
No, but I know how powerful they are with a certain kind of person. Well, that's a person that looks at me and runs away screaming. Okay, great. I want that person to improve their life too. I'm just not the person who's going to do it.
Yeah.
So part of it is when you meet somebody that you think you want them to be your coach or your consultant, it really is asking about them, and do their values line up with yours? Does their approach line up with the way you think the world works? But it requires that you have a lot of self-awareness. You need to know how you work and what matters to you, what your values are.
Yeah, and that expedition, we definitely dig deep into that. So you should have that answer, and rather than wondering later. One of the things that I definitely want to talk about is flow within whatever system that you gravitate towards. But something that occurred to me, so just as a reminder, please remind me. But in understanding myself, one of the things that I've noticed that I'm trying to address, and I'm not looking for a counseling session here, I'm just sharing that it's important to know where you're at, and sometimes it just takes a long time, is... I seem to want to recreate the wheel all the time. Like I want to do it different than everybody else. So to tie into somebody else's system, like that's difficult for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the creator in me that wants to create something new and different. I don't know if I don't want to hear what somebody else has to say, or a combination of both, or not. But anyway, exactly to your point, know thyself, and then lean into your system.
Yeah. So Jared, what you've just told me is you would not be a good candidate to be a franchisee, because what a franchise does in a business is they say, here's our system. It's plug and play. We teach you the system. You roll with it. And for lots of people, being a franchisee is a great way to have a business. But what you're saying is, no, I need to think stuff up. And you can certainly learn from these systems, but you want your own creative endeavor. Okay, great.
Yeah, what did you call them in a previous podcast? You said there's people that there's starters and then finishers. Is that the terms you use?
Thinker-uppers and follow-uppers.
One more time.
Thinker-uppers and follow-uppers.
Gotcha.
People like to think up the ideas, and then there's the people who actually implement them. That it's the person who who on a football field can get the team and the ball down to the 20-yard line, but can never take it across the finish line. You kind of need a different strategy for that last 20 yards. And life is like that sometimes, that you need someone else to finish the task. I think one of the great newer books is The Six Working Geniuses by Patrick Lencioni. And I don't know if we've talked about it, but the real contribution that this idea and his book creates is that there are six different types of people for each step along the continuum of wondering about why is a thing like this, creating the idea, refining the idea, gathering the people together who are going to make it happen, implementing the idea, and then maintaining the idea. I mean, those are all different parts of the process. So knowing where you are in that process will help you get a lot more satisfaction out of your work and out of your life.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and that leads into my other topic, and that was flow. So if you buy into a system and you don't know where you kind of fit in that spectrum, talk a little bit. We've talked about this at great length, but just so our audience knows, the finding that flow, kind of what percentage of the day that you can expect to be in that flow. And then, that way they can understand what it is, what the importance is, and what to expect.
Right. So the researcher is a academic psychologist named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and just type in Mihaly in your internet search engine, and the rest of his name will auto-populate because he's the only really famous Mihai in the world. But what he was wanting to find out is what's the highest level of human performance, and when do people achieve that? Rather than looking at pathology, he was looking at when do people really perform well. And he defined it as losing a sense of time, joining with the work that you're doing, being unaware of your physical surroundings, and being very focused. And what he found is that this very typically happened when people were at work. And the way I've defined his work, and I hope it's accurate to his work and his memory, which is when you are solving a challenging problem in your domain of expertise, then you get into flow. You lose the sense of time, and you concentrate, and you leave feeling exhausted and energized all at the same time. It's a good feeling. So if you spend a day in flow, at the end of the day at dinner, when you're talking to your loved ones, you're like, yeah, I had a good day. And if people are chasing flow, they're not going to find it in recreation unless you are at the highest level of that activity. You can lose yourself in it. By the way, video games are remarkably good at giving just enough reward balanced with challenge that it feels like flow, which is why video game use is so seductive and brings people in, because it's a really the challenge reward is titrated so well that people get into flow playing that. But it's that same concentrated experience outside of video games. And how often should you expect that to happen? Well, you can expect that to happen. People who are world class probably have it about a couple hours a day. Most of us are probably having about 15 minutes to an hour of flow a day. So you can become a world class contributor to our society if you can get 2 hours of flow a day. And then you've got emails that you got to answer, and you got bills to pay, and you got the pest control guy is coming by, and you got to manage that, and I got to make a phone call, I got to get a dental appointment, all of that. world-class people, all of the people who've come up with, world-changing discoveries had all of those things, but they worked really hard to get their 2 hours of flow every day. So, but your flow and my flow are going to be completely different.
Right. For a reason.
Right. So there are lots of activity that are challenging to me, for which I have no expertise. And if I attempt to do that, I feel nothing but anxiety. So it's this match of, it's a challenging activity in my domain of expertise, and then I'll lose myself in it.
Yeah, well, the reason I appreciate you doing all that, because I think it's super important on a couple of different fronts. One is the folks that, rarely, if ever, get into flow. They're just, like you said, they're going to be high anxiety. They're just not going to be fulfilled, in what they're doing. So don't do that. Don't jump into a system that you aren't inclined to realize flow. And then the other is for the folks that think, man, this is my perfect career, and this is exactly what I should be doing. I'm going to be in flow, 7, 8, 9 hours a day, and that's unrealistic. So,
right.
Get that out of your mind. If you can get upwards of 2 hours, feel very grateful, because that's life. You are doing the grind stuff. You are doing the non-flow stuff because it's part of reality, and don't feel like that's not helping you be successful. It's just part of life.
It's just part of life. And if you're in a position where it's all grind, you might want to reevaluate that. I think there's, I was talking to a person earlier this week or late last week who said that there's a lot of stuff happening about how important it is just to grind. And yeah, grinding is important, but that's not all there is. If you want to become a great baseball player, you got to spend a lot of time swinging the bat and missing the ball, and that's part of the grind. But man, if you never get a hit and you don't ever get that good feeling,
you might want to revisit that.
You might want to revisit that. Yeah, this is probably not for you. That was me in basketball, by the way.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah,
that's funny. So, yeah, I guess I want to make sure that we're kind of revisiting where our topic started, and that is, you got to take a step back from where most people get in, right? Most people are like, hey, I've got to go get some motivation somewhere. We talked about that last episode. And then once I have that motivation, I'm going to do something. Well, of course, those motivational speakers are almost always going to sell you something. They've got a system for you to tie into. They've motivated you. Now go do this.
Every concert I've ever been to, they're selling T-shirts. Everybody's got to have merch, because I get it. It's part of how people make money. It's how they pay their bills. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So, you got to be cautious of that, right? So, yes, good. You talked about last episode, that getting motivation is good. It's a temporary thing, but you can't keep going to these motivational, events and feel you got to find that intrinsically. And
right.
then our approach,
can keep going, but it's expensive and it's a short-term, it's a cotton candy buzz.
Yeah. So you get that cotton candy buzz, and they talk you into, because now you're really super excited, and that's when they're going to close the deal, right? They're going to pitch you on their system. So now you get in a system. If you don't spend the time to understand who you are, what you're about, what you're designed for, when you get into flow, how long are you in that system for? How much did it cost you, that system? And then how long are you in that system for? Months?
Right.
Years?
Right. Yeah. And I've been subject to it. I go to these things and I learn about these opportunities, and I get all hopped up and go, boy, this could be really helpful. But then I have to put my 24-hour rule in, which is, okay, don't make a purchase for 24 hours. And then I started thinking, am I really going to implement this? Or do I have enough time to fuss with this learning curve? Probably not. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's probably a good idea for someone with more time or somebody of a different temperament. Okay, this is not going to work for me. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so be it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some online courses, but what we know about people who start online courses is very often they don't ever finish them. They get started, they get all hopped up and excited about doing it, and then they get a few lessons in, and they go, I'll get to it later, and they don't do it.
Right.
So yeah, I'm interested in people changing their lives. So I hope that if somebody takes my online course, they actually go all the way through.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I will say, the one thing that I've really loved, reading your books and going through your courses, is that everything is life benefiting. It's not just, hey, I'm getting better at real estate or I'm doing this or that. It teaches me to be better at everything that I do. Your monitor, you monitor, you manage what you monitor. Your thinking, metacognition. That's helped me in every facet of my life. When I'm having a discussion with my kids or a friend, or I'm doing whatever, I'm monitoring what I'm thinking, and therefore I generally kind of assess what you just described. Am I really going to do that? Did I really mean that? Did I really hear what they said, or did I let my presuppositions get in the way? It just helps benefit every aspect of my life, not just my career. But obviously, that's what we're talking about primarily.
Right. And I'm sure I've used this analogy with you before, that no matter what the sport is, you've got specific coaches that will teach you the specific tactics for that sport. So you'll have a pitching coach and a hitting coach. And if you're in golf, you've got a putting coach and a driving coach. And if you're in gymnastics, you've got a vault coach and a floor exercise coach. But every sport has a strength coach, because every athlete needs to be strong. They have to have that core capacity for strength. Now, the strength coach for a gymnast, a 13-year-old girl, is going to be real different than the strength coach for, an NFL linebacker,
Right.
a 30-year-old guy who weighs 300 pounds. Those are going to be really different. But the underlying necessity for both of those vastly different sports is internal physical strength. And that's really what I teach.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I would interject real quick that and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I've got to imagine that the most people that benefit the most from your programs, from your books, are the people that are willing to entertain what's going on in their head, because that is not, the simplest. You can't make an assumption that you're going to be good at wanting to do that or good at that.
Yes. And if you're not ready or willing to do the self-reflection, the kind of work that I do is going to freak you out. And when I've done this with large organizations who everybody goes through the training, there's a certain percentage of people who just look at this, at the work I do, and they're like, this is awful, and he's an awful person. And so they have to put up with me. So, so I really prefer to work with volunteers. I really prefer to work with people who, it's like going to the restaurant. If I've got tacos in mind, I don't want a cheeseburger. And so you've got to give people the style that they've got a flavor for. And I'm not a flavor for everybody. And so when you're choosing somebody, you need to choose somebody who has your sensibilities and your values.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on our half an hour mark, but the one thing that I'll maybe summarize or wrap this up with is that I've entertained recently here is the idea. You hear thought leader on occasion, but I don't know if you often hear thought follower. I'm imagining that's, colloquially or justly called sheep. But what is your thoughts on what you just described? Some people aren't open to it or won't do it, but being a thought leader, the best way to be a thought leader is to really analyze your thoughts so you can understand other people's thoughts, and then move on to other things rather than just hearing what everybody else says or everybody else does, because that's easy, right? You just follow that.
Yeah, you just follow that. And there are sheep in the world, people who unthinkingly do what everyone else tells them to do. But there is absolutely a place for citizens, people who are not in positions of power or influence, who are getting the work done. And I think there's a lot to be said for the art of followership. How do you find somebody worth following? And then how do you support that? I mean, there are plenty of people who don't want to be the leader. So I guess I would distinguish between sheep who are unthinkingly blindly following anybody who whistles nice. Then
Right.
there are citizens, people who are self-reflective and self-aware, but they don't want to take that position of power or influence for whatever reason. They're not comfortable with it,
Yeah.
and they do a great job supporting those thought leaders or other leaders. And so if you really feel called to step out into a position of leadership, you've got to recognize that you're going to be in the minority. There aren't going to be a lot of people who want to do that, because it's easy to take shots at somebody who takes an alternative position, and it doesn't even have to be a controversial position. It's just
Differing.
I'm going to eat a banana from the other end. It's like, wow, that's crazy. Don't do.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, this is all good stuff. Like I said, we're coming up on a half an hour here, and we could probably spend another hour chatting about it. But let's make sure the folks know how to get a hold of you. They can visit you at drrogerhall.com, and
Yep.
want to share with them what kind of resources they can find on your website.
Yeah, so on my website, you've got my books, which are readily available. I've got an online course called Freak Out. Shortly coming is another course called is the online version of Expedition. I have every week a short video that comes out called Roger's Two Cents. Every day I have a quote of the day that comes out called The Daily Dose of Mental Marinade. If you'd like to hire me as your coach or to consult with your company, there's right there how to get in touch. Just reach out to me, and I'd be happy to talk to you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, as always, Dr. Hall, just great information. I hope folks take a lot out of this, and just you know see the importance of really digging into how they're wired, what makes them tick, so that when they do engage with something, they have a higher degree of confidence that it's going to be in alignment with who they are, what they're about, and hopefully meet the challenges to find their purpose and their mission in life. So we just appreciate all your insight.
Well, Jared, as I've told you before, you ask wonderful questions. You're a great interviewer,
Thank you.
and I'm really grateful that you've invited me to be a part of this program.
Well, thanks. Well, let's wrap up just real quick, guys. If you want to reach out and learn more about this and what this could specifically mean to your real estate business and implement these, or just going to want to understand more, please reach out. We'd be glad to help. But other than that, we'll sign off and wish everybody a blessed one. Thanks.